If you're looking to get into 35mm film but you don't know which camera to start with, stop right there, criminal scum, because you found the right video. This camera is a really strong contender for your first 35mm film camera. And of course, this camera isn't just for beginners, it's for anybody who enjoys having fun taking photos. Don't buy a disposable, don't spend hundreds of bucks on hype point and shoots. Buy this. I had so much more fun with the Kodak Ektar H35 than I expected, and considering I'm completely dead inside, that's kind of a surprise for all of us here. Hello there, my precious little eggies. The Kodak Ektar H35, not to be confused with their film Kodak Ektar, stupid name, I don't really know why they named it that, is a reusable point-and-shoot half-frame camera.
What the hell is even that?
As the name implies, it shoots photos half the size of a typical 35mm negative. Here's a 35mm frame, and here's the H35's half frame side by side. And after scanning those negatives, this is a single half frame, and this is a regular full frame. You may have already noticed that I like doubling up and showing two half-frame shots at a time, kind of like a little gallery. More on that later. So what does all this mean in practical terms? Your photos will have a lower resolution, your frames aren't going to be as sharp or as detailed, and they will be a little bit grainier. But to me, the pros outweigh the cons. You could take a roll of 24 exposures and turn them into 48. And you could take a roll of 36 exposures and stretch that to 72. In these trying economic times where Kodak has once again jacked their prices up and you need a mortgage to buy fucking eggs, every little bit helps. I would laugh, but it's not funny. If you're new to the whole film thing, don't be intimidated by all this talk of negatives and resolution and all that shit. This isn't Reddit, I'm not gonna gatekeep you. Here's a quick rundown of the process. You load film into the back of the camera and then you close it up. Then you shoot the roll. Next, you rewind the film back into the cassette, making sure you don't expose it to light. That'll yeet the roll, you don't want that. Finally, you either send that film out to a lab for processing or you develop it yourself at home. I have a whole video about that, you can watch it after this. This is a true point-and-shoot camera. You're not manipulating any settings. The only thing you can change is whether the flash is on or off. You compose your shot, you take the photo. It's a lot of fun. The viewfinder might take some getting used to. When you hold the camera horizontally, you'll see a vertical image in your viewfinder. And the same is true of the reverse. If you hold the camera for a portrait, you'll see a landscape. The camera is so small, you barely even notice it.
That's what she said.
But strangely not in that annoying way where it feels weird in the hands, because you guys know I've got
big meaty claws.
It fits in a pocket and really anywhere in the camera bag. And it's so simple. I can hand it off to anyone and still get cool photos. The H35 truly shines when you're having fun with it. Fun times with friends, parties, shows, vacations. In other words, the summer. Get this camera now and document your summer. I had a blast using this camera at the recent Brooklyn Film Camera event. Shout out to all the eggies there, it was really cool to meet you guys. Big shout out to Jacob for taking these photos on his receipt paper camera, it was super cool. I'm really glad we captured the moment, especially this one when I realized that I shot a whole roll of nothing in this cocina. I will make that video sometime in the next decade. By the way, at the time of making this video, the camera is currently on sale on Amazon. The link's in the description below. And it comes in a bunch of different colors, which is pretty neat. I didn't realize that at first. There is a lot to love about the H35. The positives definitely outweigh the negatives. You see what I did there? Because negatives, yeah. Here's some quick nerdy tech stuff. The lens on the H35 has an aperture of f9.6 and the shutter speed is fixed at 1/100th of a second. You definitely need to hold the camera steady. That shutter speed can and will introduce shake into your images if you aren't careful. To set expectations, you're not going to get crazy sharp images out of this camera. It is a half-frame camera with a plastic lens. But hey, compared to that 5 Below camera, this thing is incredible. The flash is good. It takes one AAA battery to power, it has a good refresh rate, so you're not going to be waiting a significant amount of time between each shot to recharge the flash, provided your battery is fresh. The range of the flash is not amazing though. You got to be decently close to your subject in order for it to illuminate them, otherwise the fall off is pretty intense and you'll get some pretty dark photos. It's time to talk about the negatives. Alright, I swear I'm done. The H35 looks great, but it feels cheap. It's all plastic. I dropped the camera once and it still works, but I don't like my odds of this thing surviving another drop or two. The flash toggle is slightly finicky. I would have preferred if there was just a button or a slidey thing. There is a little notch on the top that you're supposed to grab to turn it. Make sure you're actually doing that, because if you grab it by the sides, it's just very stiff and very odd to move. But my biggest issue with the H35 is the frame counter. The window you look through paired with the size of the little numbers is just really difficult to to read and it's hard to tell what frame you're on. But that's it. I really don't have a lot of negative things to say about this camera. By the way, this is the perfect moment to mention that I bought this camera with my own money. I am not at all sponsored by Kodak. Imagine Kodak acknowledging my existence. That said, this is not a sponsored video. Here are some tips to get the best out of this camera. Considering the smaller aperture, I would encourage you to always use the flash indoors unless you're really sure that there's a good amount of natural light coming in through a window or a door. In most scenarios, you will be glad that you use the flash indoors. This camera cannot do low light. Bright sunny days will be your best friend. Even overcast might not be enough light for a camera like this. I would avoid shooting directly towards the sun though, because many of these plastic lenses tend to flare. Try shooting diptychs. A diptych is when you pair both photos on what would have been the full 35mm frame with the same theme or subject. It's an interesting exercise to help you work a scene. You can tell a story. It's also a funny word to me because if you reverse some of the letters, it sounds like dick tip. And now that you know that, I guess you can do with that information what you will. I love my H35 and it will stay in my camera bag for all sorts of occasions. I love the moments I captured on this camera and I'm sure you will too. If you're looking to dip your toe into the film photography pool, you could do a lot worse than the H35. It's way better than buying a bunch of disposables. Let's boot up the Owen Wilson rating scale and I'm giving the H35 a truly solid 9 Owen Wilson wows out of 10. Wow. Have fun out there and be sure to share your shots with me on Instagram or on my Discord server. Obliterate that subscribe button, share the video because that helps me big time. This video is now over.
Like and subscribe. Sweet Loop Photography. Domain.